Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Firefall podcast. Today, as usual, we have our friend and producer Liam Knight. Say
Hello.
hello. And, and we also have Riley, and that's all the members of Firefall present today.
Hello, I am present.
Including me. I am now part of Firefall.
Of course, you're an honorary member of the band. Today, we thought we would continue our discussion regarding the songs on the EP, and we're going to discuss Valhalla.
Singing songs of these of old, Valhalla.
With the recording process for Valhalla, let's talk about the songwriting aspect of that. Like, where did the idea originally come from? What was the thought process behind it? And how did we get from the demo version that we originally had to where we are now? Because there were some parts that we obviously didn't have in the final recording. We had some vocal screaming stuff. We had some wolf noises. Sorry to bring it up again. Funnily enough, I had a listen to that demo beforehand, and I was like, I actually kind of miss it. Like some of the stuff that
he does it live. He does it live,
Oh, that's right. Feels in the gaps.
At the album launch, I went, oh.
And I'm pretty sure some people
awesome.
went, oh, back. So, it's
Okay.
brilliant.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's good to see.
It's becoming a staple.
I want to see a wolf on the next couple of album covers. Maybe we could progress it into that.
Yeah, it's something to think about, definitely.
There you go.
I'm more of a bear kind of guy, but
wolf.
Every band needs a mascot.
There's something to be said about a good wolf pack, A good wolf pack, I bet you could take down a bear. There you go.
Oh, I agree with that. I would say so. A wolf pack versus bear. Maybe we should let the audience decide. Yeah. Put it in the comments below.
Have a poll here in the description, vote. Anyway, we won't, because that's not what this podcast is all about. I'll be honest. The idea behind the Valhalla song came out of a desire to have something a little more energetic in the set list, because our stuff can be quite cerebral. It's the kind of music that maybe you listen with your headphones on at night in bed before you, I don't know. So it's more of a introspective, something you do in isolation. But because we're playing shows and we're playing bigger and bigger shows, apparently, we just felt the need to have something to get the crowd going. And it was something that I've purposefully kind of tried to stay away from the discussing Norse mythology, because it's been done.
Yeah.
Some might say it's been overdone. Vikings, I mean, they have their own genre. It's Viking metal, some kind of, I don't know. But the thing is, as we were writing it, it just kind of came out the way the chord progression was going. And incidentally, all the songs on the EP are in the key of B, and that was not on purpose. We just picked these songs because we wanted these songs. It had nothing to do with what key they're in, but yeah, they're on the key of B. So as we were going B, B, G, A, E, and all the other chords, it just kind of sounded Norsey, folky kind of. And yeah, it makes you think about bearded warriors drinking mead and screaming for battle.
It does. It's the most energetic track that I've heard from you, and I think it's
Then
it's
you're in
definitely
for
I can't wait. looking forward to it. But for me, as soon as I listened to that for the first time, I was like, whoa, okay, this is cool. Yeah, very energetic. It's got that sort of driving bass line. The way that I actually engineered that was so the bass would carry most of the weight of the song. So it's very locked in between the drums and the bass, as the song should be.
It's
But
super
there's
powerful. And Jordan has this beautiful like thing that he does on bass, which wasn't the way I made it when I first put the main structure or the basic structure together. But yeah, as always, what he does is he takes the song home and he works on it, and then he comes back like, oh, this is what I did, and it just elevates the whole thing. So
it was awesome. I'm trying to think. I think it was Valhalla where I listened to it for the first time, and the riff was a consistent thing. It wasn't so much of a da 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 da.
Yeah, that was something you suggested, and
Yes.
even though that's not really how we play it live now, we play it as the consistent thing.
Yeah,
I think in terms of the recording, I think that
we
worked.
would, but it's too hard to sing and play that riff. But yeah, basically, the way we play it live and how we used to play it before the studio, it was just a whole like. But
That's
what
it.
you suggested is, guys, how about we do a, and that just adds a whole new dynamic to the song. It's great.
It's that rhythmic sort of stuff. It's
syncopated, yeah.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to like reset and then go back into it, even if it is like a very small gap. It helps to make you want to bob your head. That's
Absolutely.
the intention. Yeah, and to add to that sort of stuff, Jordan had the distortion thing on his bass as well, which I think I did for the previous track. So he's got a very aggressive bass tone, which I don't think he does that live. He doesn't have a distortion pedal.
He's super happy now because he got a pedal board. Because he had the pedals, but he didn't have the pedal board and the whole setup to have them on. But now we will. So
yeah, awesome.
People watching, prepare yourselves. We're about to improve our sound massively.
Expect distortion.
There will be distortion.
Oh yeah.
Bass is super important. So many people worry about the guitar tone, but let me tell you, half the guitar tone is the bass.
Yeah, you take the bass away on a recording, and it's like, oh, where's the song? It's just disappeared.
The bass is one of those instruments that you don't necessarily always notice it when it's there, but the moment it's not there, you're like, it just feels wrong.
From like a mixing perspective, you can kind of do that two ways. You can have it so that the low end of the bass is pretty much just supporting what the guitar's doing. You feel that thing more than you hear it. Or if the bass is doing more of like a standout part, I would mix the bass personally. I would mix the bass so that you can hear the defining features of the guitar and bass. You get more of the top end clacky stuff going on from the bass. With this track, I mainly use the distortion as a way of doing that to push the sound forward. The bass also has a sub octave on it as well, and there is a bass synth going on there as well. Really low end subby stuff just to help that wall of sound thing be very apparent.
Yeah, we don't know how to do that live.
Literally, let me see if I've got one to hand. The bass version of this, Big Muff. So all you need.
I meant the synth kind of part.
Yeah, same sort of thing. You do that, and then have I got another one? Like this thing.
I love that when you just go to find your pedals, you just blend into your background.
Yeah,
like you just blur as well.
And then he appears
in the background. Yeah, so I would do Big Muff distortion for bass, and then one of these guys. So yeah, octave stuff. So you've got I don't really know how well you can see this, but there's like there's a sub blend on there. Don't know how well that shows up on the camera. So you can blend in some of the.
We can see it now.
Yeah, same sort of pedal that they use for Muse, the bass.
Because I know like you can get bass synthesizer pedals and synthesizer pedals for your guitar as well. It's just
it depends what sort of sound you want to go for. If you want a very musy sound to the bass, if you want that kind of synth thing, then yeah, the octave pedal is awesome for that. and then a bass version of the Big Muff. I've got the guitar version down there.
Now all we need is your address and let us know when you're not home. So, and we'll have all the gear.
I'm moving. Good luck.
We'll help you move your gear to our place.
Yeah,
Yeah, if one of your pedals mysteriously ends up in Luxembourg, you know where.
yeah.
Hey, man.
We're like, I swear I move more stuff than this. Why have I only just got a desk? There's nothing else here.
Even the desk's
Oh,
gone.
the desk is gone. It's just me sat on my seat in front of the wall going, I swear I had more equipment than this originally. But yeah, that'd be the way to get across his bass sound. Get him involved in that sort of stuff. Cool. So moving on to more of the guitar stuff again. Because we pretty much had the same approach to what we had for the previous song, Autumn Rain. We were originally thinking of doing more of like an amp sim thing, weren't we? So an amp simulator, for people who don't know, that's a digital version of an amp rather than plugging into a physical amp. You just plug straight into your computer and use a simulation of an amp sound. But we opted for going for real amps again for that track, and I think it sounded best, to be honest. I don't know what you guys reckon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds great. It sounds consistent with the other tracks, and it sounds very close to how we play it live. And I love it when bands playing live sounds different to on the studio, but there's still got to be that same level of consistency, which I feel we've accomplished.
It's your sound at the end of the day, because all of a sudden I had a completely different amp sound for the guitar. It might sound more like a different band. If we use like a Marshall cab as opposed to like a box or something like that, two completely different sounds.
It's funny how much difference, or how big a difference the amp you use makes, really, especially with regards to tone and sound.
It's everything. What I've been doing more these days is so amp in the middle of the room. Normally you would have a microphone right up against the speaker grill, so you would have it literally like as close as you can physically get it. But I've actually been backing the microphone away from the amp a little bit more, so maybe like a couple of feet, something like that. And weirdly, you get more of the amp tone come through from backing off from the microphone rather than just, jamming it right up against the speaker grill. In metal, it does make sense to have it as close as possible because you want that impactful sound. You want everything to be as close as possible. But for more like classic rock or just normal rock, pop, that sort of thing, it sounds quite cool to back it off a little bit. You get more of that tone from the amp rather than just, nobody listens to an amp. Same with drums, nobody listens to an amp with their ear right up against the speaker. That doesn't make sense. Same with drums, you don't listen to a drum kit with the microphone or your ear right up against the snare drum, for example. So I think that kind of adds the tone that you're going for, but for you guys specifically, it makes sense to have the microphones as close as possible. And I think I did the same technique on this track that I did on Autumn Rain, which was a 2 microphone thing. So for anyone interested, we had an SM57, which is more of the bright, gritty, aggressive kind of mic, and then I had an AKG 214, a little bit further outside the cone. So the 57 was right in the middle, the 214 was more on the outside. So you've got this bright, aggressive, harsh stuff coming from the 57, and more of this low-endy kind of warm sound coming from the 214. Blend those 2 microphones together, you've got more or less a full guitar sound. If you were to do like a 1 mic situation with just an SM57, you would just get all of this top end harsh aggressiveness, which might sound quite cool in certain contexts, but I think for what we were looking to do here, it made sense to go for just a 2 microphone setup. And typically I'd have room mics as well for that sort of thing. So picking up some of the ambience, there'd be like 4 microphones in total. There'd be 2 picking up the ambience and then 2 directly on the amp. But I think for you guys, once again, it makes sense to everything sound as forward as possible. So adding room tone to that sort of stuff probably wouldn't have made much sense.
But I think the mics in front of the amp, they capture a little bit of the room regardless.
Yeah, so with those mics in particular, they're picking stuff up like that. They're not picking stuff up just straight. They are picking like a little bit of the ambience from the room anyway.
And
But yeah,
honestly, I'm super happy that we chose to go with our actual amp sound that we use live, because
mm,
uh, we love the way our amps sound. We worked really hard, we invested money, and it's so easy to fall into this trap. Oh, okay, let's reamp everything, let's make it. But our amps sound great. I mean, we have a great
mm,
guitar tone, and I don't know why. As soon as people step into a studio, ourselves included, we always think, "Oh, come on, we can do better. Let's do blah blah blah." But yeah, good thing we listened to you, because you say,
yeah,
"Yeah, let's try it," and we did, and it worked out great.
it
I
I'm so
think
worked.
happy.
Yep.
I think there's an argument to be made. I mean, with both using simulators and physical amps, people might think, oh, it would like date your record or date the release. Because, if you use amps, 10 years later, you change your amp, it will sound completely different. But I feel
Mm,
like part of that is, bands change and develop their sound all the time. It's, I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily dating something you've worked on, because it's something to look back on at
But
the end of the day.
you're right,
mm,
but that's also unavoidable. Whatever you use, it's not going to sound the same from one album to the other, and that goes for any band. Like, let's take Metallica for example. Kill 'Em All sounds nothing like Ride the Lightning, and that sounds nothing like Master of Puppets, and so on. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you do on an album, it's like a snapshot. That's
mm.
where you were at that time. That's what you did. That's what you sounded like, and I think that's normal. It's supposed to do that.
Yeah.
It represents whoever we are right now when we did this, and let's see what we're gonna do moving forward.
Absolutely. You find that people tend to gravitate towards the older amps anyway. Everybody's after like a Marshall JCM 800, or, the traditional 5150 big metal sound PV.
Or the dual
Um,
rectifiers, the boogies.
yeah, everybody kind of gravitates towards that particular thing. And it's nice to step away from that from time to time and try out different things. I've
And
been
the
on set.
vintage 30s, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
Sometimes
are
it's fun to
great,
get. They do.
but
Sometimes it's fun just to get a little practice amp, like a tiny amp. Put a microphone in front of that and just see how that sounds. Like, even if it's a 15 watt, or maybe even less than that, like a 10-watt speaker, and just see how that sounds. It's different. Not a lot of people do it, but everybody's kind of done the big old classic amps in the past.
apparently a lot of people were chasing the tone of Trent Reznor. I don't remember what album for Nine Inch Nails,
Hmm.
and they were like making these outrageous claims and like combinations of gear. It's this, it's that. It turns out it was like a tiny PV amp, like
Yep.
a combo digital combo.
Yep.
And everyone just went mad. And obviously on the used market, those like shot up in value. But like
Oh
before that,
God.
nobody gave a two hoots about it.
It's funny, you do come across it from time to time. I've had situations where I'm like speaking to another engineer, and I'm like, how on earth did you get that guitar tone? You must have used like a massive amp. You must have had like 2 or 3 speaker stacks going on. Like, what did you use? It's like, oh yeah, I used something that's about that big. It's like, oh okay, yeah, maybe I should look into that a bit more.
People just like jump to conclusions and think, oh, it sounds this way. Expensive big amps must have been used, but people overlook the really tiny stuff. It's creativity
Mm.
and ingenuity at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's the same. You can make anything sound good if you put the time into doing that. You can make really cheap drum kits, for example, sound really good. Replace the heads, get new drum heads, make sure they're tuned properly. If you're in a good room, you can make a cheap £150 drum kit sound way more expensive than what it actually is.
As a musician, sorry for interrupting early.
Hmm.
As a musician, it's so easy to develop this addiction to always acquiring gear and upgrading your gear and getting more stuff. And that's certainly important to have good gear in a studio setting,
Mm.
because you want to get the best result possible in the
Absolutely.
studio. But I think so many bands worry too much about their guitar tone or what amps and what speakers and blah 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 blah. And what they should be worrying about is just writing good music and having something to say. Because there's
100%.
so many times you see guys with like walls of gear on stage, and honestly,
Mm.
they sound boring. They got nothing to say.
Mm.
Their guitar tone is amazing, but the music is just bland.
That's it. It all starts with a good song. If you haven't got a good song, it doesn't matter what guitar you're using, it doesn't matter what amp you're using, none of that stuff matters. All that matters is your song going to emotionally impact the listener?
And the reason why I mention this is not to put down anyone who loves gear. I mean, Lord knows we do as well.
Mm.
But if, what we do as a band is we try to work more on what we play than obsessing about the gear we play it on. I mean, we've been playing Boss Katanas for like a year, and nobody knew. In fact, I remember one time when we did our first live stream ever, we were just playing, and we streamed it on, I
Yep.
don't know, Facebook or whatever. There was like this big Marshall stack behind me,
Mm.
but I was playing through my little Katana head through a Laney active speaker.
Yep.
And but because that was low on the ground, people thought I was playing for the Marshall stack, and I was getting so many compliments on
Mm.
the awesome Marshall stack and the brilliant sound that it's not only irreplaceable but unmistakable. And I didn't want to break their illusion, but yeah, I wasn't playing for any Marshall stack. And I wasn't like that 4x12 there wasn't even plugged in.
No.
And
I think. Sorry for interrupting, but I think the you know, you get brands like Marshall and Fender. They're big name amp brands. You know, you could not be a musician and you know Marshall, and I feel it's easier for people to latch on to the big brands like that. Whereas Boss,
and they sound great. They sound great, but I think also people listen with their eyes instead of their ears.
Yep.
I mean, some of our gear is Harley Benton. Nobody ever knew or cared about that when we played live.
I feel like for the most part, people don't care about the gear. It's only like you get your gear people that shows it's like, oh, what are you playing on? What's that? What's that? But the majority of the audience don't care. As long as it sounds good, they're happy.
That's the thing with recording as well. Like who actually cares what microphones I use? Who cares what drum kit I use? Who cares about all of that stuff? They care
But
about the end result.
I do care what you did on Valhalla with that synth thing, because that sounds awesome, and we did try to replicate that live. My friend, there's one who plays the keyboards, and we tried to kind of get, because there's like a little bit of a choir in the background as well. Strings, maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, let me pull up that session. I'll just talk through what's actually in here. I know you guys can't see it, but just so I can remind myself what was going on. Yeah, so we did some backing vocals, and we layered them, and then I took that even further, duplicated it, and had it in different octaves, and then added some crazy distortion stuff to that. So you've got that going on in the background, as well as that.
See, because we use strings to.
Yeah. That works. It all does the same thing. It's just supporting that melody that's going on. There's a synth going on underneath that, but very, very low in the mix as well. And then it's just a bunch of reverb, some delay, that kind of thing, just to give it that atmospheric thing going on.
Some space,
Yeah, exactly. Just to separate it from the main vocal. And then there's the glitch effects later on.
Oh yeah, that was great. I'm glad you suggested that, because it just brings a whole touch of, I don't know, a modern sound.
I'm disappointed though. I've not seen you replicate that live yet, Nick.
I'll try to do it. I don't know.
You'd have to get the sound guy to unplug and replug in the XLR to your microphone very quickly.
What we need is like a kill switch, like on the guitar,
You
like Tom
literally just-
Morello.
Yeah, and then it'll have
Or
it
bucket
goes. Yeah, you'll have it go down the octave as well. So I remember there's a left and right sort of ping pong delay on that. So it's going and then your vocal drops an octave. It was going down an octave. It doesn't make the full octave, but you're going. And I've kind of enforced that to make it a thing. And then it introduces the next section of the song, then, which is the big heavy guitar riff thing going
That's
on.
awesome.
Yeah, it's something that I've been. As soon as I heard that song, I was like, I'm gonna do this effect. I'm gonna send it to you guys, and you're going to like it in some way, shape, or form.
You have no
Or,
choice. You are
oh,
going
yeah.
to like it.
Exactly. It just works for that particular part, and I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed that being in there. Because when I sent it over initially, I was like, maybe not, but we'll see what everybody thinks.
We are open-minded, I hope.
Oh, definitely, absolutely, and yeah, well, that really proves it with that part, because it's a weird thing to introduce to you guys without you being in the room and physically hear me doing that process. Because well, we didn't really discuss it beforehand, did we? It was just kind of, what do you think of this? I'm thinking about doing this, but you guys haven't heard this. Now you're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, sometimes it's the best approach. It's like when you're trying to feed something to kids, like, hey kids, do you want to have some egg? No. What about some tomato? No. But if you go, just, how about you try this? What is it? Just try it. It's pretty good. Egg and tomato.
So in that analogy, you're the kids.
Oh yeah, we're fussy, we scream, and we kick up a fuss when we don't get our way.
And you know, we sometimes take our t-shirts off if we want to sing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if that doesn't happen again, I'm not doing any more work with you guys. That's all I'm saying.
I need to get in shape for that.
I guess you know what we've got to do.
I guess the lights are going to be off anyway. There will be more wolves. There will be more animal noises.
I am tempted to get some wolf noise on some future stuff. I need to hear it on one of the tracks. Maybe like when we get this set up again for next time, I'll play the original version of Valhalla, and then everybody can hear it with all the bits before. I do miss it. There are some
Don't
bits
you
in
dare!
there.
Don't you
I'm
dare!
sorry.
Don't
I'm sorry.
Don't embarrass myself on stage.
But no, dude. Yeah. So yeah, Valhalla. Just to give it a brief summary. Definitely way more energetic than the previous tracks. Way more of like an electronic kind of heavy rock thing going on there, which is a little bit different from the previous tracks. I kind of originally, I think
that was by design. Sorry to interrupt. I did
That's
want to
good.
mention this. Even the tempo we chose, it was on purpose because we wanted to make it easy for people to jump up and down.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
for me personally, I hate it when I go to a show and there's a song I like and I feel the need to jump because, you know, it's a jumpy song and I'm a
Yeah.
jumpy person. but then it's too slow and I'm jumping, and by the time I hit the ground, they're still on the same chord.
And then you look around and you're the only person jumping, and it's like, oh, okay.
I wanted something like, you know, when they did Staying Alive, Bee Gees, and they
That's it.
chose like the actual like
Very
heartbeat.
intentional. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to go with people jumping up and down.
Mm.
Now that works on the CD.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, when we play it live, we play
It's
like
what, 10, 15 BPM quicker.
Jesus, you don't know what's happening because you know, adrenaline kicks in, and you wanna also, like, we're so used to having just half-hour slots or maybe a little over, and we try and squeeze in as many songs as we can, just because we want to show people what we're capable of, so they can see that we're not just like a one-trick pony. Anyway, so that's the thing with the song.
Well, one thing I want to say with Valhalla quickly, and what's something I've liked is that of all the tracks on the EP, Valhalla is the one that was written since I joined. So I was able to see the original riff that you sent to us, and then I was be able to be a part of the whole development, which has been really cool.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of cool when you're introduced to a track for the first time. You've got the option to take it in so many creative directions, and the good thing about being in a band is you all have different ideas. And especially with you guys, you're also open to everybody else's ideas. Occasionally you get bands where it's very much one person's in charge, you're following my idea, I'm not listening to anybody else. But with you guys, it's the complete opposite. You're so open to doing new things, you're so open to trying new things, which can creatively benefit the recording. Like, you're not stuck in your ways, which is awesome.
All we want to do is make good music.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said it in the previous episode, sometimes it's not just enough to have a good idea. It's just as important to execute it well, and that can go in a million different directions. So it's good to have an outside perspective.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're happy to work with you.
Oh. Well, guys, I look forward to doing hopefully more stuff further down the line. It was a pleasure working on the EP. I'm glad it's out in the world. I need to post about it though. I'm really rubbish with this sort of stuff. But yeah, I'll get onto that as soon as I can, and at least say this is out in the world on my end as well.
All right, guys, I think that about wraps it up for our little discussion about Valhalla. Unfortunately, that's all we can do at the moment without actually having a look at the project and isolating tracks and discuss in more detail. We will be doing that at a later point when we've sorted out our technical issues. But until then, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed our little talk, and see you next time.